Good evening from Emirates Bio Farm in Al Ain, UAE. We have Mr. Yazan Qodmani, Deputy General Manager and one of the very few thought leaders in food security and organic food in the Middle East. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Organic food is a very distorted sector with local players and international players. Where are we now and how can we elevate the whole sector?
Organic is one of the fastest growing sectors in the UAE and abroad. It's very important, but it's facing challenges, same as all food sectors in terms of fraud, authenticity. So now as the consumer is getting more educated, more aware about what organic means, with that knowledge, people are able to control the authenticity and verify the authenticity of organic.
Okay, in terms, how can we elevate several factors in the sector, such as logistics, such as power, energy, and all that, plus in terms of education and training, bringing the world's best practices. What are we doing in this regard?
In terms of training, for our side, we are open to visitors. In the season, we receive about 1,000 guests a week. We are educating about local agriculture as well as organic local agriculture. How does it work? What does organic mean? In terms of logistics, we are fortunate to be based in the UAE, where there is very strong logistics, retail, HoReCa industries, very active. So these things are positive, definitely.
Are you considering electric light commercial vehicles, for example, or tractors, something like that?
To be honest, it's something we would love to have, but our philosophy is that if you are a car company, you should move into sustainable vehicles. If you are farming, I want to focus on the farming. It's not my job to, if it's not available, to discover new technologies in a field I'm not in. Yeah. So we have challenges when it comes to sustainable packaging, sustainable logistics, all of these things. I'd like that every company in every sector focuses on their sector, and we will all be good.
Yeah. Policies, where are we with policies and elevating policies in this regard? Because that would help big time.
Sure. The UAE has a very strong UAE food security agenda. It mandates an increase in local production. It mandates a reduction in waste. It mandates increasing the sources of food coming into the UAE. So we have very strong changing landscape when it comes to policy. And of course, because it is not a traditionally, let's say, of course there is food production, but not a large food production and exporter. So there's still a lot of gaps in terms of policy, especially in the export, especially in the agriculture cooperatives and things of that.
Have you considered any regional interconnectivity with, for example, the GCC to start with?
Yes, I think the UAE has a very unique climate, and it's very similar in the Gulf. So the learnings that have happened, especially with the high-tech sector here in agriculture, all of the learnings and the projects that were established here, there's a lot of lessons learned that are being applied with experts from here, working with their counterparts in Saudi, in Qatar, to uplift the sector and use all these lessons learned.
Green financing in the sector, how can we basically increase that? You usually see it in the other sectors. What about food?
In the UAE, we have Emirates Development Bank mandated specifically with a budget to food security. So they are giving out loans for lower interest rate, better periods. But when it comes to the private sector, it's still chasing the high-tech, flashy.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Water scarcity. How can we address that and improve that?
Water scarcity is, of course, a big issue, not just for the UAE. I have farmers visiting from all over the world, and they are facing the same challenges. The wells are running dry, salinity, and so on, and you have more droughts and more extreme weather. So in the UAE, of course, most of our agriculture is using drip irrigation, which saves 60%. For us personally, we're looking at how to build soil so that it retains water better, how to use different irrigation systems that save water even further, how to use crops that are heat tolerant and don't require as much water. So We're very much focused on the water security challenge for us. In terms of the government, of course, there's a lot of mandates to now there's programs reusing treated wastewater. You have programs to replenish aquifers, and you have programs to reduce, in landscape, use more native plants. And of course, educate people on the importance of water.
Food waste, as you know, the region unfortunately has the world's highest food waste by far. How can we work on that? We know that the government is working on different initiatives. What about the private sectors, including farmers?
For us, we have a restaurant here. So the idea is that anything that is odd-shaped, not suitable for the market, it becomes food, it becomes pickles, it becomes jams, it becomes sauce. So we're trying, of course, to reduce the food waste and educate the sector on odd-shaped and so on. For us, we're trying to ask our partners, the retailers, to list things that are imperfect. So imperfect but perfect, or wonky or ugly, whatever the term is. But the idea is that when you're relying on imports, a lot of the time it's all sorted and perfect. So you don't have this problem. The more production you have locally, the more you have actually imperfect that requires the tomato paste manufacturing, that requires the juice to take all that, which happens in other agriculture nations.
Back to knowledge. How can we increase knowledge and nurture knowledge among the private sector? We know that the governments are basically investing a lot in this regard, bringing the world's best practices, but the different farmers, it's quite distorted. How can we improve that? Do you suggest any initiative in this regard from the private sector? And what about the academia, basically? Is there any cooperation in this regard?
In the Al Ain, we have UAE University, which has an agriculture department and a research center. They cooperate with us. You have Abu Dhabi Farmers Food Safety and Agriculture Authority, which does research and cooperates with farmers on education aspect. Silal, which again is doing research and trying. There's a big shift and movement within the government trying to support farmers. Whether the farmers are all benefiting, this is a challenge. You have over 30,000 farms in Abu Dhabi alone. So of course, shifting and creating new methods and investing in new systems will take time. You have Khalifa Fund that supports it. You have Abu Dhabi Investment Office that supports it. You have the Ministry of Climate Change that's supporting education in farming and trying to help through policies and mandate and education.
While the government is pushing hard for local produce to elevate food security, especially after COVID, before COVID and during COVID and after COVID, however, profitability remains a big question. How can we improve profitability for the private sector, including yourself?
It's a bit challenging. So we have an open borders policy.
Yes.
So you have fruits and vegetables from all over the world coming into the country.
But it's a challenge, basically. What about protection?
Exactly. It becomes a challenge for local producers because even no matter how efficient we are, it's not a level playing field. So different countries have different subsidies, have different protection measures, quotas. So they have different cost structures, very different cost structures. So it's very difficult to compete, especially if regulation is different. If, for example, a type of feed is allowed in a country that's not allowed here. Or shelf life is different in a country than here. So all these different in regulation means that it's difficult for us to compete.
How can we? I mean, you're competing with the players in Latin America with a huge logistics cost, yet they can still compete with you here in UAE. So how are you tackling that?
This is one of the big challenges that's constant.
Are you having any dialogue with the governments, for example?
Of course, we do mention this, but we understand and we agree that the UAE is an open trade, open border country. So we have to educate the consumer on buying local. We're trying not to control it through the supply, we support that. We try to create the right demand for it. If people are demanding product from France, even no matter what the cost is, so there's always a way to create that demand.
Have you tried unifying local efforts in this regard among the local producers?
Yes.
Marketing, for example?
Yes, of course. Like I said, Silal helps market the products of, I believe, hundreds of farmers. The ministry has done workshops with farmers. I believe there's a committee of farmers. In terms of food and beverages, there's the manufacturers, food and beverage manufacturers group. All of these groups are working to kind of unify efforts in this direction.
Yazan Qudmani, one of the very few thought leaders in food in the Middle East. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.